The levels that plants like is 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million. Is that dangerous to us? Submarines, those nuclear submarines, come to the surface for fresh air when the level of carbon dioxide in the submarine reaches 8,000 parts per million, which is not, we're not even close to getting to that. We're not going to reach that in a million years. 8,000 parts per million. 1,200 parts per million, not a danger to human life at all, or animal life. Most of the time in the last 50, 160, 250 million years, the planet's been at least, carbon dioxide has been at least that high. All right, one of the things we're told is that the science on climate change is certain and settled. Therefore, there's no need for discussion. The skeptics should just all go away and disappear. They're just being pests, or they're paid by the oil companies. Let's see whether or not that's the case. I call this little part of the talk uncertainty. So, settled, certain, no need for debate. Anyone who questions this is a denier, trying to discredit the science, deluded, or in the pay of the oil companies. Here's what Andrew Weaver has to say. The scientific community has a very solid understanding of what's causing global warming. It's overwhelmingly the combustion of fossil fuels. Fair enough, we already saw that. Environmentalist Guy Dauncey, a Victorian environmentalist, science of climate change is settled. Fine, done, no need for discussion. There has never been, to my knowledge, a full-scale debate on human-caused warming on any of the major TV networks. Nor has the issue been debated in Parliament or the legislatures. Incredible. So the folks that are saying the science is settled have won. They've managed to prevent or stifle any debate on this topic in the Canadian system. Here's what Andrew Weaver, climatologist, has to say. There's no debate over the human causes of global warming in the atmospheric or climate science community. Okay. Making the public believe such a debate exists is precisely the goal of the denial industry. Scientific debate over global warming would therefore imply uncertainty. No need to debate this. It's utterly certain as far as they're concerned, as far as Andrew Weaver is concerned, and many, many others. Here's what real scientists have to say about certainty. A scientist is never certain. Physicist Richard P. Feynman, one of the most famous physicists in history. We can be absolutely certain only about things we don't understand. That's philosopher Eric Hoffer. Dogma, regarded as unquestionably true, is incompatible with the scientific spirit, which refuses to accept matters of fact without evidence and also holds that complete certainty is hardly ever attainable. Philosopher Bertrand Russell, philosopher of science, and many other disciplines. What distinguishes knowledge is not certainty, but evidence. It's philosopher Walter Kaufmann. Finally, John Stuart Mill from the 19th century. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Well, let's see what Lydia Dotto, who wrote an alarmist book on global warming in 1999, had to say. Here's what she said about what's involved in science is not certainty, but proof. There is no proof that global warming can cause adverse, even catastrophic damages around the world. And then she wrote a book that said it would. No proof at all, no empirical proof. A decade after she wrote that book, there is still no empirical proof to support this hypothesis. How do we know? Because alarmist climate scientists say so. Here's what they say. This is Stephen Schneider, who actually died this week, the week of July the 21st, third week in July. I don't mean to speak ill of the dead. Computer modeling is our only available tool to perform what-if experiments such as the human impact on the future. Mike Home, a contributor to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, virtual climates created inside computer models are the best we've got. The point I'm trying to make here is this. There is no empirical proof supporting the global warming hypothesis, the anthropogenic global warming hypothesis. All of the proof, such as it is, exists in computer models, and there you've got two of the top leading climatologists saying exactly that. Models are the best we've got. Our only available tool is computer models. It's not empirical evidence. It's not an empirically based science. As far as I can tell, no other scientific discipline outside of alarmist climate science makes these kinds of claims of certainty, at least to the public, with such potentially damaging effects on our society based on so little empirical evidence. The damage that this hypothesis could cause us is enormous, and yet there's no empirical evidence to support it whatsoever. Incredible. Here's some climatologists, including Stephen Schneider, who talk about whether or not things are as certain as we're told. Trying to figure something about the future we face, says Stephen Schneider, we end up with a maddening degree of uncertainty. What? That's not what we've been told. Uncertainty so infused the issue of climate change, it's still impossible to rule out either mild or catastrophic outcomes. Uncertainties are endemic in these complex problems that suffer from missing data, incomplete theory, and nonlinear interactions. So what Schneider is saying is that the situation is in fact so uncertain that we don't know whether global warming will be benign or catastrophic. And yet they have chosen to say, nope, it's going to be catastrophic. And that it's certain that it's going to be catastrophic. And yet at the same time, we've got this. Clouds represent a significant source of error in climate simulations. I'm not saying that. It's the IPCC 2001 report. They say the same thing in the 2007 report. Clouds represent about 20% of the climate system. They haven't the faintest idea how they're actually going to affect things. They can't quantify it. So the models, right from the start, are bound to be flawed because the key element in them, which is clouds, are a significant source of error. In climate research and modeling, we should recognize that we're dealing with a coupled, non-linear, chaotic system, and therefore that long-term prediction of future climate states is not possible. IPCC 2001 report. In other words, the models that are the only source of our, say, climate fears are so imperfect that they cannot be used to predict future climate states. Why? Because climate is too chaotic. You can't use models to predict the future of climate any more than you can use models to predict the future of human behavior. Here's an example of why the prediction record for these models is not very good. Take a look. Here's what they predict for the next 100 years or the next 25 years. There it is, going up. This is called commit. Commit is a line where the yellow line across there is where we make the commitment to cut back carbon emissions so much that the temperature flattens out. And here's what the temperature's actually been doing as of 2008. Pretty much a precipitous fall from two sources. One is the University of Alabama at Huntsville. The other one is the Hadley Center in Britain. Both noting that the temperatures have actually fallen in the 2000s. Amazing. Not much predictive ability there. Here's what Stephen Schneider has to say about being honest with the public. We need to get some broad-based support to capture the public's imagination. That, of course, entails getting lots of media coverage. So what we do is we offer up scary scenarios, make simplified, dramatic statements, and make little mention of any doubts we might have. Oh, this is what we're telling the public. It's all scary. Wow. And we don't talk about any doubts we might have. Okay? Here's what Andrew Weaver has to say about the Kyoto Accord, which is similar to the Copenhagen Protocol, attempts to cut back carbon. On the Kyoto Accord, I agree wholeheartedly, as would almost anyone in the scientific community, that it will have zero effect on global warming. So we can go through all of this pain, and we can cut our carbon by 20, 30%, and it's going to have zero effect on global warming. Wow. And yet, those who criticize Kyoto as ineffective were vilified. Same with the Copenhagen Protocol, the latest one. It's not going to have any effect on warming at all. Why do it? Well, here's what Richard Feynman had to say about honesty in science. You should not fool a layman when you're talking as a scientist. I'm talking about a specific extra type of integrity that is bending over backwards to show how maybe you're wrong that you ought to have when you're acting as a scientist. This kind of extra type of integrity, and this is our responsibility as scientists, certainly to other scientists and I think to laymen. After almost 3 years of research, I can tell you with an absolute, complete certainty that alarmist climate science almost never shows this extra type of integrity. It never bends over backwards to show how it might be wrong. Instead, we have the doctrine or dogma of certainty.